Hi everyone, I'm Shayanti, the artist behind Shayanti Finance. For a while, I have been contemplating of starting a painting series inspired by the Zodiac signs. Since this is the time around my birthday, I thought this is the best time to start the series, so I'm presenting the first of the series inspired by the Zodiac sign Cancer. So, before I get started on the tutorial, I wanted to mention that since this is World Watercolor Month, I was doing a lot of tutorials with watercolor, going heavy on watercolor this month. So I started this one off as with watercolor as well. But then I thought maybe it would be a good idea to do a different sort of medium for a change. So I added oil pastel to it. So this is my first mixed media combining watercolor and oil pastel. So let's get started. I'm starting off with a light gray layer in the sky area and leaving a center part which I would put my moon in as white. And you can see that I am working wet on wet, starting with a blue, very light gray with very little blue, and then adding cerulean and cobalt and Prussian blues more as I go in. And constantly I'm working wet on wet, trying to lift some of the paint as well in some areas to get the effect of clouds. Typically, when I work with watercolor, I pay a lot of attention to the blending and make sure that it is a very even, smooth blending and none of the brush strokes are prominent when I'm working wet on wet. But here I don't need to worry about it because I know that I will be coming back and coming back with a lot of oil pastels eventually. So what I'm actually doing with watercolor is just creating a wash, more like toning the canvas, but instead of toning the entire or rather toning the paper. I'm sorry, I'm not using a canvas here. So rather than toning the entire paper with one single color, what I'm doing is I'm creating a very loose sketch with watercolors over here, and that's why I can be as sketchy as I want to be. Now I am, after I blocked in the body of the woman, I am blocking in the sea part, and just like I did in the sky, I started with very light grays and slowly pulled in a lot of cerulean, cobalt and Prussian blues as I went along. And you will see that some of the areas where I know there will be the ultimate highlights, or the foam of the sea foam, that is, those areas I'm even leaving completely white, letting the white of the paper show through because I will eventually leave it white only. All I'm doing is just sketching out and creating a loose washy kind of sketch with the watercolor. But what it did is that it toned the entire paper so that when I came back with oil pastels, there was no grainy, gritty look. Wherever the paper was showing through behind the oil pastels, what actually was peeking through is the toned watercolor background, and thus it gave a wonderful effect. This was my first mixed media with the watercolor, combining watercolor and oil pastels, and I absolutely love doing this. Now, one thing I would like to mention at this point, that you can start with watercolor and then do oil pastels on top of it, or acrylic or oil painting on top of it, but you cannot do the other way. Like, once you have used an oil based medium on top of the water based medium, you cannot go back to the water based medium. So you cannot do oil pastel first and then go back to watercolor. That is one thing that I would like you to keep in mind if you're going to try some mixed media. But this is absolutely wonderful to work in mixed media with watercolor and oil pastel. In this way, you're getting the best out of both medium. While with watercolor, you get wonderful smoothness, washes, and get a very wishy-washy look. And when with oil pastels, you get the nice, vibrant colors. Now, I am beginning with my oil pastel, and you can see that I'm starting off with the sky, obviously. And I have used a broad range of blues in the sky. There was cerulean blue, sapphire blue, Prussian blue. I think there was a cobalt blue as well. Whatever blue I had in my palette, primary blue, or whatever
I had in my 48 Pungyo set. I used each and every single run, from the lightest one to the darkest one. I've used them all, along with some grays and light and dark purple as well. Yes, I did use a lot of purple in the skies and all different areas in this painting. And you can see that I'm using a touch of black at certain areas also in the sky. And when I'm using black, against the black, I'm using some white and very light blues to create that contrast and impression of clouds and moon. At this point, I decided to finish my moon and move on to the water. Now all I have to do is cover the entire paper with oil pastels, and I don't have to be really careful that every single inch or every single centimeter is covered with oil pastel, because if it is not covered, what is showing through is watercolor background, so it's not that a grainy gritty paper look is going to pop out. Although that's a wonderful effect in itself, but that is not what I was going for. So I could use the best of both the mediums. In this particular painting, I did not use any odorless mineral spirits for blending. All I used is my fingers wrapped around a cloth. That way my finger remains clean, and the cotton rag gives me very nice blending. But you have to remember that you have to use a lot of pigment before you start blending, which means that you have to layer a lot of colors, or put a lot of layers of oil pastel first and then start blending. Or you can do it in batches, but a lot of pigment is required on the paper eventually to get a very smooth finish. At this point, it doesn't look smooth at all, but you will see that eventually, once I build all the layers and add additional layers, and make the darks darker, lights lighter, and add lots of different colors, you will see that because of the pigment itself, you get a very nice smooth blending. And also because I'm using my fingers around and the rag to blend as well. I'm creating some sea foam using mostly white but a little bit of gray. But because I am kind of going up and down, I'm picking up a little bit of color here and there, and that is helping to create a nice color of the sea foam, which is not stark single white but not nice blend of colors. Now on to the hills. The very back ones, I'm making it more lighter colored, like lighter blues and purples, but as I move forward, I am creating more darker rocks and hills. And the inner areas, or the areas farther away from the moon, I am adding a lot more shadows, dark colors, to show the effect of light. And eventually we'll see that I will also add some highlights with gray and white in some areas that are facing the moon, to show that how the light of the moon is reflecting off the surface. Adding some browns here as well to create a muddy kind of grayish look, because in the rocks I kind of wanted a little toned down and not as much blue as the water. I wanted the water to stand out, to be really blue, and everything else to be a little bit grayer. Adding purples, browns, grays, blues, and a little bit of black as well to create the rocks. As I'm moving forward, I am creating much more solid shapes for my rocks, and you will see that I'm giving them much more edge than I was doing when I was working at the very back rocks. Now on to the beach, I'm using grays, purples, and a little bit of flesh tone actually, because if in the daylight the beach would probably be kind of yellowish and creamish, but at nighttime there is not so much light, so you don't want the yellows to pop out. You want more of purple, blue tones with a hint of that lighter flesh color. That would make it look kind of natural. Although in this particular painting, I was not really going for realism as much as I generally lean towards. I went a little bit kind of towards my imagination, lent leaned a little bit more on my imagination as far as the colors of the sea or the waves of the sea or the colors of the beaches. It's a little more dramatic than in what it would be in reality, because that is a look that I was going for. And this series I had been trying to create for a very long time for the different zodiac sign, but I wasn't sure how to do it. So now, with my birthday around this time, I thought this is the best time to start the series with the Cancer, which is my birth or zodiac sign, and then follow along with every month with the other zodiac signs of that are in that month. So I think I'm going to go on with the mixed media for the entire series, but I might change my mind. It's not a hard and fast rule, but I really liked working mixed media this way: watercolor first and then oil pastel. It helped me combine the best of both the medium. I will see that in the beach area where the woman is sitting, behind her, I'm creating a very dark shadow with lots of blues and purples and grays and a little bit of black as well, because that is the area where the moonlight is not reaching because her body is obstructing the light. So keep a little bit keep in your mind a little bit which direction the light is coming from. That way, even if you are not completely working off a reference as in you would do in a realistic, say, portrait painting, you can still get the effect of realism. Onto the woman, first I'm starting with the hair. I'm using, as usual, lots of blue, purple, gray, and a little bit of black in her hair, and then blended it all off. And then came back with a little bit of highlight with gray. Eventually, I would use a little bit of white highlights as well, but at this point, I'm keeping the highlights just gray. Now on the body, I'm using flesh tint mixed with purples, browns, and blues. And since it is a nighttime look, I would not go for the real warm skin tones that you would usually see. This is more like a muted, dark nighttime kind of look. So going for a more purple, blue, gray shades, even on the skin. Onto the wrap on her body or whatever clothes she's wearing. Um, I'm using blues, purples, and browns here first. I'm adding in the darks and creating the folds first, and then I came back with the gray and kind of tried to tie them all together, leaving certain areas of the watercolor show through, and those areas I came back with my white pastel stick and then blended them all together. I also used my finger with the rag wrapped around it to blend, putting more skin tone on the leg area, and with that pretty much I'm finishing off the painting. If you have any particular questions for anything that I showed or did in this particular painting, let me know in the comments, or if you have any thoughts about this painting, if either you liked it or not, and if you did not like it, why you did not like it, or if you liked it, why you liked it, let's share it with me. I would feel awesome. And as usual, all the materials are listed in the video description below. And do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also push the bell. That is the best way to get notified every time I post new videos. I am still posting 2 videos every week, Wednesdays and Fridays to be precise, and working in different mediums so that everybody who's using whatever medium is kind of happy. So that is the end of the painting. I am taking the tape off the painting slowly, gently, working it off. And this is the part I love the most, although I did a little bit of tearing, which I did not like much. But I guess I loved the painting as it came out. Let me know what you think about it. Thank you.